Welcome to Business Connection. I'm Liz Spencer. We're in my favorite part of the show, and that's the Business Spotlight, where we get to meet one-on-one with one of our business members and learn a little bit more about their business and what they do and how it impacts the community. Today we're joined by Michael Mela, and he's of Chicago Appraisals. First, let's find out what Chicago Appraisals is. We hear it, but we're not sure what it is.
Okay. Chicago Appraisals, I own the company. We service the entire Chicagoland, DuPage, Will County area, but I personally live in South Naperville. I live in the Will County section of Naperville. So I personally do appraisals in this particular area because I live in this community.
For the real estate market?
Yes.
Okay. Now, living in the community, you know it well, and you are sharing with us. This is a tough market. What have you noticed, and who's calling?
Basically, I'm getting calls because interest rates have lowered. This is a challenging market right now. I'm getting calls from people who are getting divorced, people who are considering buying a property, and they want an unbiased third party to come in and tell them, this is what the property is really worth. I have no interest in the property. They get an accurate evaluation of the property prior to purchasing, and I'm getting calls from people who have either been on the market 90 days, and as the market is declining slightly, they want to find out, where am I? Why is my house not selling? I've been on the market 90 days. Or prior to listing their home, they say, in addition to having a real estate agent price my home, I'd like to have someone who does it every day, who works this area, tell me what it's worth.
Because in the heyday, we used to look at our neighbors and go, wow, you got $400K for that.
Right.
I'm going to ask $450 because my home's better than your home. So not quite the same amateurish viewpoint now. Now is when your service is probably needed more than ever.
Right. In a challenging market, if the market is declining, the same applies from sellers' attitudes as do buyers' attitudes. Buyers in this marketplace are mostly very sophisticated. The ones that qualify are sophisticated. So they're saying the same thing that sellers said 2 years ago. If my neighbor sold, if a neighbor of yours sold for $400,000 in a declining market, you're worth $375. So as sellers' attitudes were 2 years ago, buyers' attitudes are today, and that's what's creating that.
Now, with real estate, it's an emotional commodity, more so than you would think for something that is tangible and that, but it's emotional. Tell me how that impacts what you do and why a third party is beneficial.
Right. For example, like a divorce situation, I'll normally come in and say, let's look at this. This is an asset that you both have worked for. Let's look at it logically instead of emotionally. I know you're emotional. We all are, especially emotional about the relationship and housing combined, bad combination. I tell them, let's look at it from a logical standpoint. Having a third party, unbiased person, not in the relationship, doesn't live in the house, come in and tell you what the house is worth so you two can logically look at it and say, we both work for this asset. Here's its value. So I think it's important to hire a professional when you're dealing with emotion and changing market conditions.
Right, because when it was a seller's market, we were all happy.
Right.
And now it's a buyer's market, and that impacts the real estate agent, who is maybe not as objective as they need to be. Right.
Or, in a changing market, they may not be working it as often. I do 3 of these a day, 5 days a week, so I'm pretty set mainly in this area, Will County, DuPage County. Naperville, I try to stay in the Naperville area, close to home. So I've really got my finger on the pulse of what's happening in this marketplace.
When should we do an appraisal? When we're thinking about selling, or when should we do an appraisal?
I recommend doing an appraisal prior to listing your home. To have an unbiased person look at it and say, here's what it's really worth. And if you've been on the market for a while and the house isn't selling, or you're considering buying something, and you might say, you know what, I'm going to hire someone before I write an offer to tell me what the place is worth now.
Now, if I'm considering buying a home and I say, come on in and take a look at this, Michael, and you come in less than the offer, does that give me an extra card towards that buyer? Where do you rate?
It's a matter of your comfort level. If you're the prospective buyer, you may highlight the number and say, here's what an unbiased party told me the house is worth, and we're in a declining market. Here's what I'm willing to pay for it. I'm buying an asset from you that's currently losing value. They will highlight the number on the appraisal and say, here, Mr. Seller, I'm sorry. And there's a lot of inventory right now. So buyers have choices.
I was going to ask, since you've got your finger on the pulse in Naperville, how is the real estate market?
The real estate market in Naperville is holding up better than outlying areas because of the demand created by the school system. Okay. So like yourself, myself, we came here. You ask the majority of people who live here, young families, why'd you come here? Schools. That creates demand. So if we have some form of demand on housing, that alleviates some of the declining market.
And when you're in a home and you're doing the appraisal, what are you looking for? I mean, what are you judging?
It depends on the purpose of the appraisal.
Okay.
We are looking at what closed most recently, most nearby, of similar size, quality.
So you're looking at the neighborhood too?
You're looking at the neighborhood, you're looking at the location. Does it back a busy street? Is it impacted by road noise? There's many factors that impact the value of a house. So we're, in a changing market like this, it requires a lot more research because sometimes there are indirect sales that, for example, if a person who's getting divorced is competing with a bank-owned property, the divorce sale is a valid comparable.
Okay.
But they did compete with a bank. So it requires a lot more research. There's a lot more work going into. So
with an appraisal, are you looking at the house structure itself, or are you looking more at the factors that influence that property?
Both.
Okay.
Both. We're looking at, we walk in mainly as a prospective buyer initially. Okay. What's appealing about this property or not compared to the surrounding area? So, like I say, if you're impacted by road noise, there are things that impact the value. So we're looking at what is impacting the value of this property. How does it compare to recent sales?
Michael, what do you like best about your job? It seems fascinating.
It is. It's a pretty cool job. What I like best about it is I meet new people every day.
And I bet you help a lot of people every day.
In this market, I feel like I am helping people more because, like I say, if you're buying an asset in this area of this value, you kind of need someone who does this. I feel I'm helping people when you're buying something in a changing marketplace.
And of such a large value.
Exactly.
Michael, thanks for taking time to stop by and explain a little bit about what you're doing. It sounds fascinating. We're going to be right back with more Business Connection. Stay tuned.